My name is Abby Folson. I am the COVID Program Manager at the North Dakota Department of Health. I'm going to take the next 5 minutes to discuss strategies to identify good studies. This topic is important because misinformation is everywhere. We live in a day and age where we are flooded with information from all different viewpoints. It can be difficult to sort out which findings are true. My goal is to equip you with tools to find studies that you can be confident in and to help you weed out misinformation. For the purposes of this presentation, we will be focusing on identifying valid primary sources. Primary sources are original documents or original research. These sources require direct data collection and analysis. Examples of this are clinical reports, case studies, research articles, interviews, and surveys. This presentation will not be focusing on secondary sources, which is a summary of existing research. Examples of secondary sources include newspapers, magazines, and patient education. Unlike primary sources, these sources are more prone to bias because they are secondhand account. So that being said, how can you know if a primary source is valid? Well, one thing you can do is look at the journal that the article was published in. And you can determine if the journal was good by looking at the journal's impact factor and how it ranks on the journal quality list. You may also want to determine if it is published in a journal that is relevant to the topic that the article was written on. You will also want to look at who the authors were of the study and what their credentials were. You'll want to look at what degrees they have and if their degrees were on the topics that they're writing about. Look at the universities or affiliations that they have and ask yourself if they have a good reputation. Another question to consider is, have they written other articles on the same topic, and are they considered an expert in the field? You may want to also ask yourself when the article was published, and was it recent? If not, are the findings consistent with current studies? You'll want to look at how many times the article has been referenced. Is it an article that's cited in all other studies on the topic? You also want to examine who funded the study and what would impact and how would that impact the findings of the results. So for example, a cigarette company funding a smoking policy study may have an impact on the results. I also like to examine the methodology section of the study. And I like to look at the sample size. Typically, the larger the sample size, the better. So for example, a sample size of 70,000 people would be better than a sample size of 10. You'll also want to determine if the sample represents the population being studied. So for example, a study looking at trends in North Dakota would need to have a representative sample of the state. So participants should include those who live in the western part of the state and the eastern part. It should include those that live in rural and urban areas, and it should include participants of all different ages. You'll also want to look to see if there are confounding variables. These are any variables that may have an impact on the outcome of the study. So an example of this would be if you were looking at length of stay and age in patients, a confounding variable may be underlying health conditions. Lastly, some other considerations are the findings consistent with other studies? And if so, why is that? Is that a red flag? Are the findings generalizable? So for example, if it was a geriatric study, you may not be able to apply that to children. And look at the statistical findings of the study. Are they significant? If so, by how much? And always look at the study's limitation section. In conclusion, I want to thank you for watching this presentation, and I hope you can apply all these strategies when identifying studies in the future.